The morning sun bled across the small town of Cedar Ridge, painting the dusty street in gold and fire as Clara Whitmore stood stiff and unyielding inside the courthouse. Her black mourning dress clung to her like a shroud, the weight of widowhood still fresh upon her shoulders. 3 weeks had passed since Sheriff Thomas Whitmore had been buried in the rocky soil beyond town, yet already the townsfolk spoke in hushed tones of what must come next. Judge Harlan's gavel cracked against the wood. His stern voice carried finality. "The law is clear, Mrs. Whitmore. A woman cannot hold property without a male guardian. If you do not remarry, your husband's land reverts to the territory." The words struck like blows. Clara's gloved hands trembled around her reticule, but she lifted her chin in defiance. "I can manage the ranch myself." The judge's eyes softened with no pity. "You cannot. The county needs that land tended. The town council has already arranged a match." The door creaked open behind her, boots heavy against the floorboards. Silence swept the room. Clara did not need to turn to know who had come. Everyone in Cedar Ridge recognized the tall, scarred figure who kept to the edges of town. Eli Danner. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair that brushed his brow and eyes the color of winter steel. His face bore a thin scar running from temple to jaw, a mark of a violent past. He had worked her late husband's land for years, speaking little, always watchful. Now he was to be offered as her salvation or her sentence. "Mr. Danner has agreed to the arrangement," Judge Harlan said. "With his 40 acres from the sheriff's will, combined with your spread, it makes sense." Clara turned at last, meeting Eli's gaze. He stood tall, expression unreadable, his clothes simple but clean. Canvas trousers, a worn vest, boots that had seen too many miles. There was no flicker of desire or triumph in his eyes, only a quiet acceptance, as though this fate had been thrust upon him the same as her. "I do not require a husband," she said coldly. "No." Reverend Peyton cut in smoothly, his sanctimonious tone raising the hairs on her neck. "But the people require decency. A young woman alone invites speculation. Already whispers circle about the sheriff's final ride. A marriage will put such talk to rest." The room felt suffocating. Clara longed to flee, but pride held her steady when, "Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, Judge Harlan replied. The words echoed in her ears. Tomorrow, she would become wife to a man she scarcely knew. A man whose silence frightened the town. A man with shadows written into every line of his face. When the session ended, she insisted on speaking to Eli outside. They walked into the sunlight, stopping by the water trough. His posture was calm, but his eyes studied her with a soldier's alertness. "You don't want this," Clara said. "Neither do you." His voice rasped low, gravel worn from disuse. "Then why agree? I owed your husband. He gave me work when no one else would. Didn't ask about my past. This is how I pay the debt. He asked me to look after you if something happened." Her breath caught. Even in death, Thomas had bound her future with promises she had not chosen. She steadied herself. "Then hear my conditions. This will be marriage in name only. Separate rooms. I keep my independence. I will not be owned for the first time." Something flickered in Eli's eyes. "Respect. Perhaps I don't own what can think for itself. Mrs. Whitmore." Their handshake sealed the pact. His grip was firm, calloused, but careful. Tomorrow they would stand before the judge as husband and wife, yet strangers still. That night, Clara walked through her quiet house, every corner steeped in Thomas's memory. His chair by the fire, his pipe still resting on the table, his careful notes in a weathered journal. On the last page, a line stopped her heart. "Eli Danner is a good man. If anything happens to me, he will do right by Clara." Tears blurred the words. Thomas had trusted Eli above all others. But trust did not banish fear. In the silence of her bedroom, Clara lay awake, haunted by questions. Who was Eli Danner truly? What secrets carved those scars? And what kind of life awaited her in the arms of a man the town both feared and whispered about? The morning of the wedding dawned gray and solemn. No church bells rang, no guests gathered. Only the judge, the Reverend, Eli, and Clara stood within the bare courthouse walls. She spoke the vows in a steady voice, though her heart rebelled. Eli's deep rumble answered in turn, firm but devoid of warmth. A brief exchange of rings, a final word from the judge, and it was done. Clara Whitmore was no more. She was now Clara Danner, bound by law to a man she had never chosen. They rode home in silence, side by side yet worlds apart. The prairie stretched endless around them, a land as lonely and unyielding as the man at her side. When they reached the ranch house, Eli dismounted and offered his hand. For an instant her palm rested against his, rough and steady, sending a spark she did not expect. She pulled away quickly, unsettled by the warmth that lingered. Inside, the house felt changed already. His presence filled the rooms, heavy and quiet, a reminder of the new life forced upon her. She retreated to the kitchen, preparing a meal out of habit, while Eli checked the barns and fences. They spoke little, two strangers, learning to breathe the same air. But that evening, when he returned with dust and blood staining his shirt, she saw the truth etched across his skin. Old scars crossed new ones, a map of battles fought in a past he never spoke of. As she cleaned the fresh wound at his shoulder, her hands trembled, not from fear, but from something unexpected. His stillness, his quiet endurance, the flicker of gratitude in his winter blue eyes, all of it stirred something in her heart she had sworn closed forever. And in that moment, Clara Danner realized the prairie might not remain silent much longer. Something had been set ablaze, something dangerous, something undeniable. The days that followed their wedding moved slowly, each one marked by silence and unspoken questions. Clara carried herself with dignity in town, ignoring the whispers that followed her every step. Some said she had moved on too quickly, others that Eli Danner was too dangerous a man to share her roof. But Clara kept her chin high. She had endured worse than gossip. At the mercantile, Mrs. Hutchins leaned close to her companion and whispered just loud enough to be heard. "Shameful, isn't it?" From a respected sheriff's widow to the gunslinger's bride, Clara ignored them, her hands steady as she paid Mr. Morrison for flour and coffee. Yet she felt the sting of judgment deep in her chest. Outside, the sun beat down hard as she secured her purchases to the saddle. That was when the crash of shattering glass carried from the saloon across the street. A moment later, Big Jim Sawyer stumbled out, blood streaming from his nose. "Stay away from her, Danner!" he bellowed, his voice thick with rage. "That woman doesn't need your kind sniffing around." Clara froze, every muscle in her body tense. Then Eli appeared in the saloon's doorway. His movements were slow, unhurried, his shirt untorn despite the brawl. He touched the brim of his hat toward her, in a gesture so polite it made her chest tighten unexpectedly, then turned and walked toward the livery stable. The crowd's whispers rose behind her. "That's your husband now." The killer McCready brought to town. Clara mounted her horse and rode home with her back straight, though inside she was trembling. Big Jim's words clung to her like burrs. What had Eli done to earn such hatred? And why did her heart ache at the thought of him standing alone against it? At the ranch, Eli was waiting by the corral, his shoulder dark with blood beneath his shirt. Clara's eyes widened. "You're hurt." He glanced at the wound as though just noticing, caught it on wire. "It's nothing. It needs cleaning," she said firmly. "I can manage." "Sit." Her voice left no room for argument. For the first time, Eli obeyed without protest. Clara brought water and cloth, forcing herself not to flinch as she unbuttoned his shirt. Her breath caught when she saw the truth. His back and chest were covered in scars, old and new, bullet wounds, knife cuts, lashes from whips. His life had been written in blood and pain. "This wasn't from wire," she said quietly. "Big Jim." He had friends. They thought 3 against 1 would change the odds. Did it? No. She cleaned the wound, her hands brushing the solid strength of his body, her heart beating too fast. Eli remained silent, though his jaw tightened with every touch of cloth. When she finished, she stepped back, shaken by the storm of emotion she could not name. Later that night, she found him in Thomas's old study, sitting at the desk by lamplight. Numbers filled the page before him. Cattle counts, fence repairs, winter supplies. He looked up, startled by her presence. "You missed supper," she said softly, setting a plate down. "I don't." He stopped, then reconsidered. "Thank you. You're planning for winter. Someone needs to." His tone was gentle, almost apologetic. "Your husband was a good man, but not much of a rancher. The herds are thin, fences are weak. You'll lose cattle if we don't fix it." "We?" Clara asked. "If you want to learn, yes. I'll teach you." The words stirred something unexpected in her chest. A partnership, not ownership. But then she asked the question she had dreaded. "Big Jim called you a killer. Is it true?" Eli met her gaze without flinching. "It's true, I've killed men. Some for money, some for survival. That's what the town whispers about. That's what I was before Clara absorbed the words, waiting for fear to rise. Instead, she felt only a strange calm. "You're not that man anymore." He looked away. "A man doesn't change what he is. Maybe he tries," she said quietly. "Maybe that's enough." For a long moment, their eyes held across the small desk, something raw and unspoken building between them. Then Eli looked down, picking up his pen again. "Thank you for supper." Clara left the room, but her heart was not the same. She had seen more in Eli Danner's eyes than the killer the town feared. She had seen a man burdened by ghosts, but also a man who carried gentleness in his silence. The days grew shorter, the prairie winds colder. Clara found herself riding with Eli at dawn, learning the land, learning the rhythm of ranch life. She stumbled often, but he was patient, steady, his rough voice guiding her. Slowly, almost against her will, she began to see the man beneath the scarred surface. One afternoon, a rattler startled her mare, sending her crashing to the ground. Pain lanced her ankle and shoulder. Before she could cry out, Eli was there, his arms strong around her, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. "Easy. I've got you," he murmured, voice low against her ear. He set her before him on his horse, holding her steady as they rode home. Clara could feel his heartbeat against her back, his warmth surrounding her. The ride seemed endless and too short all at once. At the house, when he carried her across the threshold, their eyes met. His breath came fast, his hands lingered a moment too long at her waist. The silence between them burned hotter than words. That night, as rain battered the windows, Clara sat by the fire with her ankle wrapped, watching Eli's face in the flickering glow. Scars caught the light, shadows deepened his eyes, but there was something else now, something she had not seen before, longing held back by iron restraint. When his gaze finally met hers, the prairie itself seemed to hold its breath. The storm outside raged wild, but the quiet inside the ranch house burned even hotter. Clara sat on the sofa, her injured ankle propped on a cushion, while Eli fed wood into the fire. Shadows danced across his face, softening the harsh lines, making him seem almost gentle. "Tell me something," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "Something that isn't about scars or gunfights." He leaned back in the chair, considering I had a dog once. Found him starving behind a saloon when I was a boy. Fed him scraps till he trusted me. He followed me everywhere. His voice grew rough. My father shot him. Said we couldn't afford another mouth. Clara's heart ached. "I'm sorry," he shrugged, though his eyes betrayed the old wound. "What about you?" "A cat named Duchess. She lived forever. My mother hated her, but she was mine." Clara smiled faintly. "She died on my 16th birthday. I cried for days. Natural to grieve what we love," Eli said softly. The firelight flickered, and something in his gaze made her pulse quicken. "Do you ever grieve?" she asked for what I never had. His voice dropped hard to mourn a life you never lived. Their eyes locked. For the first time since their forced vows, Clara felt the barrier between them crack. She shifted slightly, her hand brushing his. He caught her fingers, hesitant but unable to let go. "Clara," he whispered, her name tasting like both warning and prayer on his lips. Her breath caught. "Yes?" Quote. "This thing between us," he faltered, jaw tightening. "I'm trying to be honorable." "I don't want honorable," she said, her voice trembling. "I want honest." Lightning split the sky, thunder rolling after it. The lamp sputtered and died, leaving only the fire to light the room. In the glow, everything felt more intimate, more dangerous. Clara's hand rose to touch his scar, her thumb tracing the line. Something broke in Eli. He bent forward, his mouth capturing hers in a kiss that seared hotter than the storm. It was not gentle, not cautious. It was hunger, years of loneliness set ablaze. Clara gasped, clutching at his shirt as his hands framed her face. When he pulled back, breathing ragged, regret flickered in his eyes. "I'm sorry." She silenced him with her fingers against his lips. Don't you dare apologize for the first real thing that's happened between us." Her boldness startled him, but it also freed him. Eli kissed her again, slower this time, tasting her like a man starved. Clara melted into him, her body trembling as if the prairie itself had caught fire around them. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "This changes everything," she whispered. "Yes," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything." The storm howled outside, but in the small ranch house, the silence of the prairie was gone. In its place burned the first fragile spark of love, dangerous, undeniable, and brighter than either of them could resist.